Oh, what am I missing? What's going wrong here? Everything's going where it's supposed to be, right? It's all where it's supposed to be, isn't it? Did you put the thing in the place where it goes and the yes, it's where it's supposed to be?
Sure.
We're where we're supposed to be right now. We are. We're ready for a show. And according to the chat room, we are live. Hi, everybody. Ready for a show?
Let's do it.
Starting in. Oh, I forgot to fill that thing out.
Huh?
Hold on one second. Okay. Starting in 3, 2. This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 658, recorded on Wednesday, February 14th, 2018. Love is in the science. Oh, yes, it is, everyone. I'm Dr. Kiki, and this is This Week in Science. And tonight we are going to fill your heads with love, infidelity, and fireflies. But first,
disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. To err is human. To learn from your mistakes is divine. Actually, learning from mistakes is just what learning is. And learning from the past mistakes of others, along with how others got it right, is only as good as the information they left behind. For the first time, two rocks were banged together that produced a spark. The world did not change in any significant way. Not until the person who discovered this interesting effect showed it to others did this knowledge begin to spread. And at first, it may have been little more than a cave parlor trick, something to amuse one's peers with. Then, one dry summer's eve, as the crowd oohed and awed, an errant spark caught a whimsical wind and swirled its way into a pile of flammable tinder. And fire was invented. If enough of the cave party survived the fire, that is. If not, perhaps the discovery took a little bit longer. Thankfully, we have found a collection of primitive parlor tricks gone awry where the party survived to publish their tales. On This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind I can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kiki and Blair.
And a good science to you too, Justin, Blair, and everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. We are back yet again, and it's time for the TWIS Love Fest, because the night of our broadcast is Valentine's Day. Every few years it falls this way. Sometimes we land on a science day like Darwin Day, but that was a couple of days ago. Happy birthday, Darwin, again. But tonight it's all about
you didn't hear?
the love.
Right.
I know. Yeah, he died. I know.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. I just, imagine that he can hear me. Because I've got him right here with me.
Hi, Darwin. Hey, good to see you, bud.
Happy birthday, Darwin.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Anyway. But that is not what tonight is all about. Tonight is all about amour and, science, because we're a science show. So I have stories about the language of love, buying happiness, and rising tides. Justin, what do you have?
I've got chemistry.
Of course you do.
I've got mammoth love, fluffy bunnies, and pituitary pups.
All right. I can't wait for all that. And Blair, please share what is in the animal corner.
I have some invertebrate sex, or some invertebrate catfishing, more like. I have brain versus brawn, and I have bird udders.
What? That doesn't sound very aerodynamic.
I can't wait to tell you all about them.
Well, I can't speak for Justin, but I'm looking forward to that story. Faux show. All right, let's jump right into it, everyone. But first, I want to remind you that you can subscribe to the TWIS podcast everywhere good podcasts are found. And you can find us on YouTube and Facebook. Just look for This Week in Science or TWIS, TWIS. You can also visit twis.org. But how do I love thee? In how many languages can I tell thee? Let's let the scientists count the ways. A researcher named Tim Lomas from the University of East London, he's a lecturer in positive psychology, has published a study in the Journal for the Theory of Social Analysis, where he is searching the world's languages, in his words, for words relating to love that don't exist in English. Yeah, and so this has been kind of attempted before, but going back to the 70s, there was a psychologist named John Lee who identified 6 different styles of love, and he looked at Greek and Latin and a number of the languages based around that. He identified 3 primary forms of love: eros, which is passion or desire; ludus, which is flirtation and playful affection; storge, which is familiar or companionate care. And then there were 3 secondary forms that were a basis of combining these 3. So it was like a multiplicative combinatorial effect. You have ludus plus storge. It creates pragma, which is rational, sensible, long-term accommodation. Pragma is probably what many married couples feel after decades of being together. Eros and ludus generates mania, which is possessive or dependent or troubled intimacies. And eros and storge equals a charitable, selfless compassion of agape. Now, this is a start, but really, that's like 6 words, right? We've got many languages on this planet. So he is looking into lexicography. He's trying to collect words that would be considered untranslatable, so that just we don't have the same emotion or the same meaning that we need to convey it in a word in English as another language may have. And this researcher has about 1,000 words so far that are these untranslatable words. And so coming out of this, he's got these words related to love. And so he has analyzed around 50 languages and grouped the words that he's found, hundreds of them, into 14 flavors of love. So, next time you go to the ice cream store, I'd like one of the 14 flavors of love, please. And these come in many different meanings. And some of them are related, or they're compounds of related terms from various languages. And so there is an interesting one, which is a love that's a connection to place, which I think is very interesting. These are related in concepts like Turangawewe, Sinfin, and Querencia. This is from Maori, Welsh, and Spanish. And these all have to do with that feeling of having a home or a place to call home, whether home is where the heart is, kind of a feeling. The love between people, there are non-romantic forms of care and affection, which are storge for family, friends, philia, and philautia, which is the love for ourselves. Mm-hmm. Romance, we have pragma, mania, and ludus, but adding to that, there's the passionate desire of epithymia, and star-crossed destiny love, which is Ananke. And the spirit of Ananke comes also from the Japanese. It can be found in the term koi no yokan, which means premonition of love. And then the Chinese also have yuan fen, which can be interpreted as the force of irresistible destiny. And then there are selfless transcendent forms of love, where it's not about you, it's about other people. And this is related to the agape. There are a group dynamic, or koinonia. There is a reverential devotion that the religious might hold, which is sebomai. And there are all these different ways that we can love. And these are just some of the flavors of love that the study of lexicography is bringing to us to help us understand more about the many ways that we love and can describe love. So thanks to science, the study of language and how we use words, we may understand our own psyches a little bit better.
Yeah, it also kind of makes me want, like, as a sort of cultural reference, I wonder if there's, I wonder if there's languages that have, I wonder what language has the least words for love.
Oh, that's an interesting question.
And is that indicative of the society, or how does that society interacts with themselves? Or do they just sort of, like, I think, like, Americans probably have a few less words. We just use love. Like, but we also,
serious. Yeah, it's the same thing. Your partner who you're falling in love with, you say, "I love you."
Yeah.
My child.
How'd you like the movie? I loved it.
I love it.
Think about coffee. I love a good cup of coffee. Like, you can't throw this word around.
But you love your parents. You love your children.
Mm-hmm.
You love your significant other. You love some of your friends. But it's all the same word.
It's the same word, but my love for coffee is very different from my love for my child or my husband.
Yes.
So maybe the sheer number of words wouldn't really be that indicative of a society.
But it might clear out some difficulties. Think about, all of the friend zone individuals who think that a particular person is in love with them, but really they're in love with them as a friend.
Yeah.
If there was a word for that.
And it's interesting to watch.
There is a word for it. Awkward.
I was just going to bring that up. It's interesting to watch the development of children coming into understanding of these different forms of love. My 6, soon to be 7-year-old son, a week or so ago, for some reason, started talking about, that when people like each other, but it's awkward. And I was like, I stopped for a second and I asked him, I said, "What do you mean awkward?" And he just looked at me and he said, "Mom, awkward."
Oh my gosh.
Oh, okay. Wow. All right. You're getting it.
He's really, wow. He's growing up too fast.
Growing up way too fast. But as these concepts become apparent, there's the psychological evolution and development of the brain and behavior. There is the development of the language we use. There's this cultural aspect as well of how it's used within the cultural construct. So who we are, it's all based on this in and out in this world that we live in. And if we can use language to understand that a little bit better, it could be interesting. Researchers at Florida State University are also trying to figure out how to help us have better relationships, how to help us stay fidelous, stay away from infidelity. Yes. So these researchers publishing in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, they had a couple of studies looking for different aspects of evidence of infidelity and also responses to stressors and the environment to figure out cues and things people could keep an eye out for or train themselves on to be better marriage partners. They went into this whole study with the idea that we are looking at a United States population, at least, with a 50% or less and dropping, or a 50% and higher, and increasing divorce rate. The number of couples that remain married is decreasing drastically. So they followed 233 newly married couples for about 3.5 years and documented aspects about their relationship, intimate details like marital satisfaction, long-term commitment, whether they had strayed, and also if they were still together. They tested processes that everyone shares just to one degree or another, which are attentional disengagement and evaluative devaluation of potential romantic partners. So attentional disengagement is, in this case, they showed pictures of attractive people and unattractive people to these married partners. And attentional disengagement was how fast they disengaged and stopped looking at the pretty people. So pretty people get more attention and a longer period of attention than less pretty people. But if you are in a stable relationship, you disengage more quickly than somebody who is in a relationship that has infidelities.
The wandering eye.
Exactly. It is literally a wandering eye.
Are you looking at her? Do you think she's prettier than me?
Yeah. And then there's the evaluative devaluation. And so it is looking at these attractive partners and not only disengaging your attention, but also, they're not good enough, or they're not as good as my partner, kind of a thing. Devaluing them and their potential. So they did find that with these newlyweds, people who did disengage their attention very quickly were less likely to be have infidelities. And it's such a fast thing. The number is amazing. Individuals who looked away in as little as a few hundred milliseconds faster than average were nearly 50% less likely to have sex outside marriage. And if a partner took longer to look away from the alternatives, they were probably more likely to have infidelities, and their marriages were more likely to fail. And the tendency to downgrade or devalue potential romantic partners also lowered the risk of infidelity. And that kind of makes sense. If you're faithful, even though you might go, oh, that's an attractive person, you're still going to go, but my partner is so much better in these ways. You're going to look at that other person and go, yeah, they're not good in that way. I don't like that. And you will mentally, psychologically come up with reasons to stay with your partner and not start straying. And so the psychologists say that these reactions are automatic. McNulty says people are not necessarily aware of what they're doing or why they're doing it. And these processes are largely spontaneous and effortless, and they may be somewhat shaped by biology and or early childhood experiences. So this wandering eye could just be a thing. And that's just the type of person that partner is.
So are you saying that some people are less likely to have successful marriages just based on who they are? Is that what the leap there is?
That's what the leap is.
Yikes.
Well, they're more likely to have infidelities. Or maybe, if you're talking about marriage in the traditional sense, maybe they're going to be great at having open relationships.
Right. But I mean, maybe in some ways that is kind of a solace to people who have had unfaithful partners, because it's not you, it really is them.
Really, it's me. It's not you. I know.
Yeah,
I've seen it.
It's literally, it's like their biology. Sorry.
Or their psychology,
also,
like, how they were, what they grew up experiencing. Yeah.
Let me disclaimer. This is not an excuse to use that.
Absolutely, because even though these are automatic,
it's in my biology. I don't know what to tell you.
They are also learned behaviors.
I would like to point out something. That while maybe, what is it, 50% of the marriages end in divorce?
Mm-hmm.
The other half end in death.
Yeah,
So-
that's true.
So keep that in mind. Like,
Yeah.
There you go.
there's only two ways out.
So then the study also wanted to look at the other predictors of infidelity, and they were looking at age, marital satisfaction, sexual satisfaction, attractiveness, and also history of short-term relationships. They found these younger people that were, this makes sense. If you're less satisfied with your relationship, you're more likely to be unfaithful. Yes. So marriage satisfaction, relationship satisfaction is a big predictor of infidelity. Well, duh. But the crazy thing here is people in the study who were satisfied with the sex in their relationship were more likely to have infidelity.
Really?
Yeah. And so there is a question that's raised here about positive sex attitudes, just leading to a general seeking of sexual relationships.
Okay. So I am not a psychologist, but I sometimes consider myself a quick gleaner of human motivation. I think those unsatisfied with their current sexual thing might be more willing to say, you know what? Because you don't like to do that, I had an affair. Versus somebody that's like,
that's not what they found in this particular study.
Right.
I mean, it could another study
who
could
are
find something
satisfied.
different. Yeah. Exactly. And sex history was a predictor. So men who reported having more short-term sexual partners before they got married were more likely to have affairs. But the opposite is true for women. So it's like women were going, do I like this? Do I like this? Do you like this? No. Okay, now I found the one I want.
Yeah.
But for men, it was much more the short-term relationships were a predictor of having affairs. And also attractiveness is a predictor as well. A person's own attractiveness is negatively associated with infidelity among women, but not men. So less attractive women are more likely to have affairs, according to this study. However, men are more likely to be unfaithful when their partners are less attractive.
oh, so that's just a house full of cheating.
That's a house full of cheating right there.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the results, while it might be a little depressing, what they're hoping is that to be able to find out these factors that lead to divorce, lead to infidelity, lead to the failure of a marriage, that maybe people can start learning about these tools, teaching themselves how to do things differently. Can you teach yourself how to attentionally disengage? Can you teach yourself how to devalue these things that, stimulate you, attractive people, ooh, fancy. And can you can you learn how to psychologically devalue that for yourself? Can you add things into your relationship that will lead to better marriage satisfaction? Can you, what things can you do? And then possibly also understanding what factors predict infidelity. Maybe it'll help partners pick better partners that'll last longer in the long run.
So is the implication here that somebody who measures as someone who is likely to have to cheat, basically, would always be that way, or there's an opportunity for them that to be different?
Well, I mean, people are people. So how can it be?
Right. Well, because you were saying before, right, that it's somehow just linked into a person's wiring, right? So it's not necessarily due to whoever they're with, but it has to have something to do with where they are in their life cycle, right? Like that has to be.
There's got to be other. There's got to be that involved. There are complexities. Absolutely, with individuals. When you take any group of individuals and dump them into a spreadsheet, that becomes numbers and behavioral outcomes. A lot of the nuance is lost. But at the same time, of course, yes, it is a mix. People are a mix of their biology and their environment, right? So
Yeah.
maybe some people are hormonally wired to be very just outwardly focused all the time and not focused on the safety and the comfort of a long-term relationship. Maybe it's wiring, maybe it is also childhood or young adulthood experiences, and also what is, like you said, what's going on in a person's life right now. But they did find, like I said, short-term relationships before marriage and men were a predictor of infidelity. That doesn't mean it's all men. This is statistics and probability, and it's not going to be the way it is for everybody.
So let me just tell you, it's all men.
It's all men.
I'm just wondering if, since we have measures and we have predictors now, right? If pre-marriage counseling becomes a thing, that's something that you could potentially see coming, at least to be able to say, let's work through some issues. Let's figure out what's going on before you two get married, because it seems like maybe you need a minute. It's a thought.
It could be. I mean, people love the romance of marriage.
Yeah.
But, marriage is a lot more than just the wedding, and it's a big commitment. And I think there's a lot lost by not having many of the customs that we once did, that people jump into these things much more nowadays. And pre-marriage counseling, it's a great idea. Sure. But I don't know. Let's talk about more love and science. Let's move on. But did you want to say something, Justin?
I just wanted to say, follow up on my every man will cheat. I think every woman will cheat. And with some, it's when the opportunity comes up, right? For most, though, I would hope it's if an extreme outlier of an opportunity with somebody who you might have been that starstruck lover with, had you not been with this other person for a long time first. It's a complicated thing to be a human being. It's like all of those words of love that you were breaking down earlier. People can find that in more than one place.
Yeah.
Monogamy's tough. But yeah, it's I think if the person you're about to get married to has described the fact that they've been in dozens of relationships, none of which lasted more than 2 months, probably not marriage material even now.
Unless they're a woman, apparently.
Or make sure that you're past that 2-month time frame before you have the marriage conversation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, good call. Yeah.
None of my relationships last more than 2 months. We've been together 2 weeks and 3 days. You want to get married?
Hell no.
No, I don't.
Let's wait until 3 months.
All right. Tell me some more love stories, Justin.
Oh, yeah. So elephants, as they are all across the world, once roamed across North America. Woolly mammoths were common in Canada and Alaska, and there was something called a Columbian mammoth, which occupied the regions between Washington State, South Dakota, and all the way down south into Mexico. Most of these went extinct about 11,000 years ago. Some isolated in the Arctic were around until about 4,000 years ago. Now, or actually a little while ago, 117 footprint track that was about 43,000 years ago, fossilized on public lands in Lake County, Oregon, has been revealed and has clues about an ancient family dynamic of Columbian mammoths. This is Redelick, professor at the University of Oregon Department of Earth Sciences and studies lead author. These prints were especially close together, and those on the right were more deeply impressed than those on the left, as if an adult mammoth had been limping. Study reveals the limping animal was not alone. 2 different sets of smaller footprints appeared to be approaching and retreating from the limper's trackway. This is Redelick again. These juveniles may have been interacting with an injured adult female, returning to her repeatedly throughout the journey, possibly out of concern for her slow progress.
Oh.
Such behavior has been observed with wounded adults in modern matriarchal herds of African elephants. So, 43,000 years ago, mammoths, they loved each other. They cared. These particular tracks were made in a layer of volcanic soil at Fossil Lake. And interestingly, they named it Fossil Lake because of the abundance of fossils.
Oh, go figure.
Yeah. I guess this site was first discovered by University of Oregon science professor Thomas Condon, 1876. And wow, the fossil collection is now boasting upwards of 50,000 fossil specimens.
Fossil footprints are something that they boggle my mind. The idea that footprints can be trapped in time and not be washed away, not be diminished, and be recognizable so many tens of thousands years later. I mean, that to me, this kind of a discovery is awe-inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Pretty
the
cool.
mammoths, yeah. So the mammoths were traveling as a pack, and they cared for each other. Mammoth love.
Modern elephants, when they lose their teeth, they only get a certain number of sets of teeth. When they lose all of them, they need mushy food because they can't chew anymore. And younger elephants will actually pre-chew some of their food. Yeah.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah, so they really appreciate the older members of their herd. But then the elephants eventually will go off to find softer food, so they're not encumbering the group anymore. And that's what elephant graveyards are. They're swamplands where there's soft food that elephants can eat.
And then they die there and they get stuck there.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were just like, up, it's my time. Better head over to the graveyard.
Yeah.
Lie down and die.
So my grandchildren can come visit me later. No, it's mushy food. It's pureed food for the older elephants.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
You learned it here. Elephant aging, elephant graveyards, pureed food, pre-chewed food for elephants.
So where you going when you get old? I think I'm gonna go hang out in the marsh.
Yeah.
Wander around there for a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
Better that than having to get dentures. Come on.
Well, basically you're gonna go live at the Jamba Juice. Think about
Yeah.
They should start parking Jamba Juices right close to the retirement communities.
Yeah, don't need your dentures in for those.
No. Oh dear. Justin, did you have another story you wanted to talk about right now?
Yeah, I can go with this is loving it with the lights on. Woo! Can we power entire communities with clean energy? Green power sources, solar and wind? Yeah, we can. But then what happens at night? When the sun is no longer in the sky and the winds calm down, do the lights just turn off? Is that what's going to happen? Is that the future?
No.
We already have that. That's called the sun's up during the day and it goes down at night. One possibility is to use any excess solar and wind-based energy to charge solutions of chemicals that can be stored for use at night. During the downtimes, chemical solutions of opposite charge pumped across solid electrodes could create an electron exchange that provides power to the electrical grid. The key to this technology is called redox flow battery. Finding that it needs to find chemicals that can not only carry sufficient charge, but also be stored without degrading for long periods of time, thereby maximizing power generation and minimizing the cost of replenishing the system. Unfortunately, no one has figured this out. So, one day, when they figure this out, we will have a story. Oh, wait, here's the story. Researchers at the University of Rochester and the University of Buffalo believe they have found a promising compound that could do the trick. And by trick, I mean transform the entire energy storage landscape and make renewable fuels a thing that we can use everywhere. In a paper published in Chemical Science, an open access journal of the Royal Society of Chemistry, researchers describe modifying a metal oxide cluster, which has promising electroactive properties, so that it is nearly twice as effective as the unmodified cluster for electromechanical energy storage in a redox flow battery. That's twice the thing that they were hoping to achieve to get to sometime in the future, and they found something that's twice as effective? Wow. Research was led by the lab of Ellen Matson, PhD, University of Rochester, assistant professor of chemistry. This has been the sort of thing, like we have the Tesla battery thing. If you want to spend all that money and put a giant battery wall, the power wall, where it can store energy from your solar during the daytime, or if you've got a wind energy thing, or you could just pull it from the grid during the off-peak hours and store it there. The expense of those is pretty insane, though. So with this, what they're hoping to do is come up with something a lot less expensive, so that it can be used cheaply by everyone everywhere. And even if you forget the solar and the wind aspect of this, just utilizing energy in off-peak hours means it'll be cheaper for everyone, and means we'll be getting better usage of the energy we produce. We'll actually consume, because a lot of the energy, once energy goes out into the grid, a lot of it's just wasted. A lot of it doesn't even get used from the point of production to we lose more than half of the energy we produce just transmitting it and having it buzz about the grid, waiting for somebody to turn on a light. So if this prototype battery works out, that could be a definite huge boon, not just to the economy, but to the environment as well.
Yeah, these kinds of batteries, usually they're larger sized, and so they're not really the kind of power wall, put it in your home kind of application, but they are definitely, think of a large apartment complex or a skyscraper in a city. These are the kinds of things you could put one of these flow batteries on a floor, or for a set of floors, or for industrial applications. These you have these tanks of fluids and molecules that are going to be passing by each other. If
Look,
if
Arizonans,
they've got
when's the last time you actually
greater
used your
efficiency.
swimming pool to go
Yes.
swimming in?
Who
Right?
needs that in
To a
Phoenix?
battery.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I've been waiting for years for advancements in these areas, and I think we're finally starting to hit some of them. I mean, a lot of them, it's prototypes in laboratories still. And so, we just got to keep our fingers crossed that there can be technology transfer. We've got proof of concept. Let's see it grow. Let's see it get transferred out of the lab into some kind of a company application where we can get it manufactured and put in use. That's what we want. That's where we're now. That's where we are now, I think.
Yeah, and I wanna thank real quick everyone who's bought a solar panel to this point, because that's part of why this is happening now, is because solar panels are more of a viable option, because it has become more efficient, because the prices have gone down, because people have actually started investing their own money into this new technology. And as a result of that, now people are trying to find ways to bridge that gap when the sun is not out. And so I think that it's it's frustrating at times that that's the way progress works in our world, but when it starts to work out to our favor and to the Earth's favor, it gets me really excited.
We can hope. Let's keep going in the Earth's favor and in people's favor. I mean, there was a study that came out this last week talking about black lung in coal miners it's increasing. The rate at which coal miners are getting black lung is increasing, and the doctors are finding it more. Yeah, it's like an epidemic. They don't know what's going on. It's getting worse.
But we have less coal miners than we've had at any point in the last 100 years.
Yeah,
how is it
fewer coal miners doing all the work.
Yeah, or are they digging deeper? What's happening?
No, it must just be the last jobs left done by humans are the ones that have always been the dirtiest. Yeah, I think there was probably guys who were coal miners who never got past 10 feet in the entrance. Yeah, I'm a coal miner. Well, actually, once the cart comes to the surface, I push it out into the daylight. Then somebody else takes over. It goes onto a truck or something. I don't care. Like, there may have been like layers and levels of being a coal miner, but the only thing that's not automated now is the dirtiest, grimiest, most in-your-face coal job that there was. So,
yeah, we don't need to have. Let's try and clean it up for people's health, for our planet's health. Let's see what we can do here, people. Oh, let's positive note it. Is it time? Is it time?
It's time.
I think it's time now for Blair's Animal Corner.
With Blair.
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. Wanna hear about animals? She's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels.
Got Blair.
Oh, I have catfishing fireflies. So
there's way too many like animals in that.
Yes. But you know what catfishing is, right? Everybody, does everybody know?
Okay. I only know what this is because I was wondering why there was a fishing show on MTV. And I was like, MTV is showing people catching fish? Like, the channels have gone out of their boundaries. They got to get back to. And so I tuned in for like long enough to regret it. but
so catfishing, colloquially speaking, is when someone pretends to be someone else to woo an individual through the internet or what have you, and then eventually they show up. Bam, you've been catfished. That, 22-year-old bombshell is actually a 54-year-old man. So that's what catfishing is. Yes. Well, it turns out fireflies do it. Let me explain. So there's two North American genera of fireflies, Photinus and Photurus. And they have similarities. They both flash patterns to attract potential mates. The males do this. And then the females will actually flash in reply to say they're interested. They look very similar. Their flash patterns are similar, but they are distinct. Where it gets interesting is that some of the Photurus females have interest in the Photinus males. And that is because those males have a special chemical defense in their blood. So when birds, spiders, ants try to take a bite out of these fireflies, this chemical defense, this toxin, is released in tiny droplets, and then the predator will spit them out and they'll survive. So where this gets interesting is that those females of the other genera will pretend to be their genus and then eat them. So
I'm gonna fake it and then I'm gonna eat ya.
That's a catfish fillet.
That is a catfish fillet, indeed it is. Yes, so the females will respond to males with a female signal of the other genus. And then when the males come up close, they grab them and eat them. They use those toxins. They're called, I looked up how to pronounce this beforehand even too, and now I'm going to mess it up again. It's lucibufagins. There we go. Lucibufagins. It's a lot of
you got to practice those words in front of the mirror a few times.
Yeah. I did it a whole bunch. Still not possible. Lucibufagins, they are steroids. They're actually similar to the poison generated from foxglove plants, from foxgloves. And then when the female, when she lures the male in, she eats all of his blood. And then she is able to use that to protect herself, which she does not produce on her own, and it passes on to her offspring. So, and here she is taking a bite out of that male in the video that you're watching. It takes a really disturbing cut to in just a minute. They jump ahead, bam, he's upside down and hollow. Yikes.
She's like a jade or a vampire, or this is a firefly who is faking her identity to be able to get what she needs to survive, and and to get what her offspring need to survive.
That's right. Yes.
It's like a
succubus, perhaps?
A succubus. It's a black widow, vampire, succubus.
I think it's just being a female.
Maybe. What's the last kind of little turn in this story that I find very interesting and also a little funny is that the wariness from these males becomes a part of their biological history. This genera, the Photinus males, take over 7 nights to find a female and woo it and get up close enough to mate. And sometimes they get eaten. The female of the same species takes less than 6 minutes to find a male. So the male has to act so careful.
Because they might die.
Because they might get eaten.
And this is a weird thing. This is like, is this a genetic memory, or is this just what's left of a population after having gone through this predation for so long?
That would be my guess. Is that it's a selected trait, the wariness.
To be wary. Yeah.
That's how they survive.
Well, one of the things that's sort of interesting too is there's other aspects of this. Hippos will attack humans, but they won't attack a whole lot of other species if they're around. They only get really aggressive when humans come by. And zebras have a tendency to stay out of blow dart range from humans, right? Like there's all these weird like ways that animals interact around humans, whereas a water buffalo passing by might not even like raise an eyebrow, right? So there's
that's kind of complicated, because I would say most prey species are going to run away from humans because we have binocular vision, and that's right away a signal that we're a predator.
Oh, you think it's just a visual, like anything with the eyes up front? Yeah, you gotta stay away.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there is also though there are habits that do get trained in over generations. There are lots of habits of bird species that live in urban environments versus the same species that live in rural environments. So when you have animals that you can compare, those that exist where humans are versus those that do not exist where there are humans, their behaviors are different, and the way they react to things are different. And there's there is a lot of anecdotal evidence of especially species that we hunt, but who live in areas where humans have never been hunting before, are much tamer. They don't run away as quickly. So
that's what happened to a lot of lemur species that were very quickly hunted to extinction, and of course the poor dodo as well. They just went,
it's probably,
hey, what are you doing? What's up?
you're gonna you want to eat me?
Delicious.
What?
Yeah,
it's probably also why so many megafauna.
Oh, a sauna. This is nice.
No, not saunas, megafaunas. Like the large creatures that used to roam Australia and North America, they hadn't seen humans before. And as soon as we show up, we're able to walk right up, stick a spear in their eye, and you're like, I didn't see that coming. None of the other creatures ever put a big stick in my eye before.
Yeah.
And well, so but it also probably that easy to kill.
And a lot of these island species, again, they don't have big predators. So if you go to mainland areas where there are big predators that look even a little bit like us or have traits in common, they're going to be much more predisposed to run away, which is why also in Australia, there's a bunch of species that are endangered because of cats and because of introduced dogs and because of dingoes in spaces where they weren't before. It's because they're just not used to being hunted, period. And so they're just
hunted by those creatures.
Well, they're just not being used. They're not used to being hunted pretty much in general, which is why a lot of these kind of weirdo animals live on islands. It's because of island biogeography and because evolution didn't put the same pressure. We're on such a tangent right now. Anyway, these fireflies are already showing weariness because they might get their blood sucked out. Moving on.
I understand.
Fireflies to hummingbirds. I want to talk about a type of hummingbird a lot of people don't know about. They think about the Anna's hummingbird, or they think about the ruby-throated hummingbird or the Allen's hummingbird. Those are kind of the hummingbirds we're used to seeing in North America, at least for those of us who are from North America. But this story is about the Costa Rican hummingbird, which is about twice the size of those smaller guys. They have a long curved bill that's perfect for sipping nectar from bright orange heliconia flowers or helisonia flowers. And they have a very interesting way of displaying for females. We've talked a little bit about leks before, L-E-K, a lek on TWIS in previous conversations. Lots of birds do it. It's basically where all the males hang out in one place, like this giant arena. They display, they sing, they march around, and the females come and take their pick.
That's right.
And these hummingbirds will actually have an 8-month breeding season with these leks. That is
because they are close to equatorial, that they're so far south?
That definitely helps for sure. Yeah, that the nectar is plentiful for a longer season because it's warmer. Absolutely. And so they find a perch. The males find a perch in the forest understory, and they sing that whole time. So they find their territory. They're saying, "Hey, babe, want to come over to my nest?" And they're singing for 8 months. And the males will get better or worse perches. They'll fight for those perches. They actually stab at each other with those curved bill tips. Unless dominant males, known as floaters, they won't even have a perch. They'll come and hang around the lek, around the edges, but they won't have a perch that they're defending. So understanding all of that they're competing over a specific space, they're singing the whole time. Well, over 8 months, a hummingbird's still got to eat. So they actually have to leave their perch to go get nectar and then come back. And in the time that they do that, they can actually lose the best sites. So this is a whole extra pressure on them, a whole extra selective pressure, because not only do they have to be big and strong enough to defend their space, but they also have to be quick enough to make their trips fast to come back to their space. So what this new study from Cornell University found was that spatial memory outweighs body size, and fight and flight power in hummingbird success. So based on everything I just told you, you would think being strong and being big would help you defend the best space, would help you have the best songs because you can display and you have the most energy and all this kind of stuff. But actually being able to find the best nectar in the quickest route possible is the most selected for trait.
Right, because they're being efficient. The more efficient male hummingbirds leave their perch, go get food faster, come back, and there's less time for their perch to be taken from them.
Right.
For
So
them to be
and they're better
Exactly.
energized. They didn't spend all their time flapping around.
Yeah.
And if they got
Absolutely.
not the same perch, they had to pick a different one that wasn't as good. They spent more time perching and singing and less time just flying around in circles, figuring out where the nectar was.
Right. Got more FaceTime with the ladies. Absolutely. So they found this out with a laboratory experiment. They had a row of 3 hummingbird feeders near a lek. 2 had only water, 1 had sugar water, and they watched the birds make a trip to discover which feeder had the best stuff, the only stuff, really. And then they waited until the birds came back, recorded whether they found the sugar water on their first try following. And then they tested 30 male individuals, and most of the males completed at least 10 trials. So this is a lot of data that they got from these guys. There was only 1 male who got all of the trials right. He never missed the correct feeder. There was a male that did no better than you would expect by chance, which is a third of the time. And then there was everything in between. So they had a really great distribution of data, and they could see success and extrapolate information from that. And they found that birds with better spatial memories were consistently more likely to be dominant birds with perches. So even though they maybe weren't stronger, they were still better at keeping their perch because they were quick. And the floaters, the little guys who didn't have a perch at all, were the ones who couldn't remember which feeder was which at all. Not only were they tiny, but they were just not very smart. This was independent of age, so it wasn't a learned thing. It wasn't from experience. And even more surprising was that the females were more swayed by the mental acumen than the physique. This was a good indicator for who was going to win out at a lek. So they also found, this is my favorite thing, that males with better spatial memory also sang more consistent songs. And they think that maybe it's because the singer sounds less like an inexperienced youngster and more like a veteran survivor. But for whatever
they've
reason,
had better food, they've been around longer.
Yeah, but somehow the spatial memory is somehow related to their singing ability. So maybe they're just overall smarter.
I think that would be more of a generalist kind of a smarter thing because, typically you wouldn't necessarily think that spatial ability would have anything to do with singing.
I kind of would. I kind of would.
It's a different. The spatial memory is a different part of the brain altogether. You're dealing with the hippocampus and other areas of the brain that are not related to the vocal song production centers.
Well, not the production center, maybe, but there is spaces. There's in music and in the structure of a thing, and there's I can sort of see music as spatial structures, as giving pauses here for effect, going that direction a little bit, and then bringing it back over here some more. Like, I don't know. I could sort of see how those could be related.
Maybe you have a good graduate thesis on your hands there.
There you go, Justin.
Pick up and run with, because I won't do anything with it.
Sounds like Justin's going back to school.
Yeah, and in the chat room, Bleak is saying that math and spatial awareness and music are related in Bleak's opinion. But there is a certain aspect of structural awareness to musical, in humans at least, to musical ability. And we do draw a lot of parallels between song production in birds and vocal production in humans, and also potentially musical ability. Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, and I don't know anything about it. And my gut reflex was to say, why? That doesn't make sense. Because after studying spatial memory for so long, we never asked a question of how it correlated with song ability or with mating success. We never looked at that in the
Kiki's
study.
going back to school. She's dusting off the old
Kiki,
research
go back.
papers. She's
Kiki,
trying to
go
find
back.
the birds she worked with. She's hoping they're still around so she can say, well, she might figure something out.
Right.
Well, teaser for after the break, my last story involving bird udders, all about zebra finches. So there you go, Kiki.
I do love the zebra finches, but oh my god, imagining them with udders. I think I need
Just
to
make
clean
a
my
quick
brain.
sound. Make a zebra finch sound. Okay, now make that smash with a cow.
I'm just going to stand here and laugh. You guys, it is time for us to take a break. This is This Week in Science. We will be back in just a few moments with more stories. I've got Rising Tides and Can't Buy Me Love, but you can buy me happiness, according to science. That's right. We'll be back. Stay tuned.
Can't explain the things you heard with more than intuition. The line of reason shows the way to go. No conclusion. The methods of hypothesis and patience are the only things I need. Put on a pair of goggles and go looking for.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us once again for another episode of This Week in Science. We are thrilled that you are here with us to talk about science, to learn about science, to find out about things like elephant graveyards and pre-chewed food. Come on, everyone. You don't learn about things like that anywhere else. Because this is where Blair is. This is where I am. This is where Justin is. We're here every Wednesday, and this is really all thanks to you because you do support what we do and you do keep us going week after week. So I would like to take this moment to remind you of the various ways that you can help TWIS out and continue to support us in our endeavors of bringing you science on a weekly basis. TWIS.org is the website that you can find all sorts of information about TWIS, and you can find links to things that are of interest in this way. If you would like to buy TWIS gear, click the Zazzle store link. That will take you to our Zazzle store. If you want to go directly there, it's zazzle.com/thisweekinscience. We have t-shirts, we have polo shirts, we have pillows, we have mouse pads, all sorts of items with the TWIS logo and also with original art from Blair's past couple of years Animal Corner calendars. It's great stuff. You can show off your love of TWIS. You can share your love of TWIS with others in the world, and the proceeds go to help This Week in Science, so you can help support your favorite science podcast. If you do not need any more stuff, but you want to help us out and help us pay those bills, well, one way you can do that is to scroll down the page. On the front page, there is a yellow donate button. You can just click that donate button. It'll allow you to donate one time, whatever amount of your choosing. It's through a PayPal interface. If you are interested in supporting us financially, donating on a weekly basis, go to any show page and you can scroll down to the bottom. There's some pink buttons underneath the show notes where you can choose to either be a one-time contributor or to have a recurring donation of $2 a month, $5 a month, or $10 a month. Any of these go through PayPal, and they, minus the PayPal processing fees, help us pay the bills. Indeed, they do. Now, beyond PayPal, if you would like to join our Patreon community, that's where we're doing a little bit more crowdfunding. Over on Patreon, you can click the Become a Patron link and become a patron at the level of your choosing, whether it's $2 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month. You can choose your level of support and be a member of the community. We post the YouTube program here. We also post the podcast. We have special content sometimes that comes out only for our Patreon audience. This is a special place to be if you would like to join us here and support us in an ongoing fashion. Now, say you're not really able to help out with the stuff or the financial support. You're like, I got my own bills to pay. Well, are you subscribed to us? Do you know people who should be subscribed to us who maybe only listen once in a while? We really would love you to subscribe. So you can go to TWIS and click on the big orange subscribe button. That will allow you to subscribe either on no, just one tube, YouTube, over on iTunes in the Apple Podcast Marketplace, or in Google Play, the Android Marketplace. Any of those places, it helps us out a lot. Knowing how many people are downloading the show, having you subscribe, and getting new people to subscribe to the show, it helps us grow and helps us be more. Help us be more. We'll help you know more week after week after week. All right, everybody. This is where I stop talking for this portion of the show and just say thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being a part of what we do. Thank you for supporting us in all we do. We really couldn't do this without you.
But I still give a damn. The ramification of treatments from holy men leaves me slightly queasy deep down in the abdomen, convinced that the lives that they lead need adjusting. They drive to the bookstore and blindly start trusting the miracles and cures all they
And we're back with more This Week in Science.
Yes, we are. And it is time for that wonderful part of the show that's uplifting and inspiring. Oh, no, I mean, the whole show tries to be, but this weekend, what has science done for me lately? Oh, yeah, it's here again. And on Valentine's Day, what else to celebrate Valentine's Day than sonnets? Stephen from Australia, from Perth, is back again with some sonnets. 2 more sonnets for Blair. Yes.
Ooh, wow.
Here they are. The first, My Springtime Hell. Perth winter rains dye all the pastures green. The spring is close behind. Where hell ensues, the views are plundered by a new regime. As wildflowers bloom in all their wondrous hues, east winds now rising from the low plateau lift pollen grains into the clear blue skies. They're carried down onto the plains below, instilling misery in countless eyes. But thanks to science, spring I can endure, non-drowsy antihistamines, the cure.
Yes.
Very well done.
So good.
Oh, good. And number 2, My Podcast Heaven. I eagerly await each episode. My ears are filled with science. Day and night, 100 podcasts to my phone download. Flash memory stores untold gigabytes, but listening hours are too few in each day. And science shows have grown in recent years, but I can change the speed at which they play. At 1.3, I've caught up on arrears. So thanks to science, I am entertained as more of our vast cosmos is explained.
Very well done.
Well done. I love it.
Thank you, Stephen.
Stephen, thank you so much for your
So
creativity, for these wonderful thoughts about what science does for you. Yeah, for springtime, antihistamines. Oh my goodness. Yes, the allergies. Many people appreciate the science behind the cures for allergies, the treatments for allergies. And now I know that you listen to our show at 1.3 times normal speed. I know Tom Merritt listens to it at something like 1.5 times normal speed or something. Who else out there listens to us
a lot
quickly? And how often do I particularly sound like a squirrel?
I'm interested in if they can tell when I've had my late afternoon coffee and they have to slow it back down.
That's right. That's
Because
right.
sometimes I feel like I'm on 1.3 speed in real life.
Yeah. But podcasts, science makes podcasts possible. It really does. Everybody out there, it doesn't have to be a sonnet. Blair loves a sonnet. I love a good sonnet. Sonnets are fabulous.
They're so great.
What a great expression of feeling in words. But it doesn't have to be a sonnet. It could be a haiku. We do love science haikus, but it can just be a letter. It can be a short note. I want you to write in. Come on, write in. Tell me what science has done for you lately. How has it made your life better? How has it just given you a moment of happiness? What has science done for you lately? Leave us a message on our Facebook page. It's This Week in Science over on Facebook. Pretty easy. Or you can email me, Kirsten, Kirsten, at thisweekinscience.com. I want to keep it going until we've filled up a year. Come on, let's make it to Earth Day, everybody. Let's do it. What has science done for you lately? You got to tell me. Justin.
Huh?
Fluffy bunny time? I do love
Fluffy bunny time. Okay. So, when were fluffy bunnies domesticated?
Bunnies.
5,000 years ago.
Wow. Very good. Kiki? Venture? When did humans start taking bunnies?
Bunnies. When did
as
we domesticate bunnies? Yeah, I mean, cats were what? 5,000. Were cats 5,000?
Cats were, I think, 5 to 7. Dogs were between 10 and 40. They're not sure.
Okay, so I'm going to guess that rabbits were not as long ago. I'm going to go with about 5 to 7,000 years ago. That's what I'm going to.
Okay, so turns out bunnies were domesticated by monks in 600 AD. After an edict from Pope Gregory declared that it was acceptable to eat fetal rabbits, known as lorises, during Lent. Problem is, that story, which is and has been the prevailing story cited as the advent of bunny domestication, is not true.
Oh, you know why I didn't go for the 600 AD number? I'm not Catholic.
That's it. That's what happened.
I don't know that eating fetal rabbits is something that Catholics talk about a whole lot.
I've never had that conversation with somebody who is Catholic.
This is what people who've been trying to research rabbit domestication have found as the source, the thing that must be true. This is archaeologists Even Irving Peace and Gregor Larson of the University of Oxford accidentally discovered that the story was likely completely false when trying to test how well the molecular clock method works for genetically dating domestication in rabbits. So they went and looked at wild rabbits. They went and looked at wild rabbits, and they found that the wild rabbit and the domesticated rabbit likely diverged sometime during the last ice age, maybe even before. Like, this would have been, it's cold outside, right? Everything's frozen over. I'm going to take a rabbit into the cave with me. And like, now we're buddies.
Well, you have to take 2 rabbits into the cave with you.
Right.
And then
you
wait a little bit. Then you have a food supply. Yeah.
More bunnies. And we're all warm.
Yeah. So, but then I realized, like, actually, these aren't very well related, even. Like, this might not be a domestication thing. These might just be two disparate species that haven't interacted in a really long time. And maybe that's not a domestication event. Maybe that's just a separation of two species of very different rabbits. So they looked at it a little bit more. So they suggest in the paper, domestication is more likely cumulative effect of hunting rabbits during the Paleolithic era, keeping them in Roman and medieval enclosures, and then moving them from place to place as people traveled and wanted to bring a food source with them. And eventually, this breeding led to pets. So not a one-time, hey, let's decide to make this rabbit our friend, but just a long history of slow evolution into a bred species that, like, the wilder of the breed probably escaped.
Well, but also I think
like,
domestication.
The natural selection was who's going to get out of the cage and who isn't, right?
I do think there's a difference between domestication and pets, because you could just be talking about livestock, right? Think about rabbits. They're not very tame. They're not house trained.
Even still, hundreds of thousands of years later.
Wait a second. Pause for a second, because I've had a domestic rabbit pet, and they are easier to train to poop in the right place than a cat.
Interesting experience. Sounds like an outlier.
Yeah, your rabbit doesn't care about you.
But you can't. The thing you can't train them to do is
love you.
No, is to not gnaw at any electrical wire that they can find that's on the floor. They will gnaw through every power cord that you have draping the floor to their access. But they will always, with very little training, they will always prefer to poop in a specific cage or like rabbit litter box that you provide them.
Well, if you think about it, they're not only are they probably a very good source of meat, but furs. So I think my money's on they were domesticated a very, very, very long time ago, because they don't require that much. They just need some vegetables. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, and you don't even
hay.
And it isn't like livestock where you have to have large pastures and fences so they don't go places. I mean, you can just put some trees in the way.
Yeah, or you can bring them in and keep them from freezing in the winter, which is the thing that Justin mentioned about the Ice Age, right? Is that if you have sheep or cows, they gonna die when it freezes outside. You can't bring all of your cows into your shelter, but you could bring your bunnies into your shelter.
But the big point here, though, is that there's no one particular event. That this was just a lot of different events, lots of breeding events, lots of probably trading lots of rabbits back and forth, and they just happened to use. And if they maybe got a different wild rabbit from a different place, that maybe they might have found a closer relationship, right? But they didn't.
This is Larson kind of sums up what you're saying. He says, for the vast majority of human existence, no one said, I'm going to grab this wild organism and bring it into captivity, and voila, I will create a domestic one. If you want to divide the continuum into a dichotomy of wild and domestic, you can do that. But you have to know it's necessarily going to be arbitrary. Rather than asking when domestication occurred, Larson believes we need to reconsider what domestication even is, and whether humans have ever really intended to cause it.
Fair point.
We have been, as the colleague Irving Pierce says, we have been slightly arrogant. We know a hell of a lot less about the origins of the things that matter most to us than we think we do.
Accurate.
Yeah, people, stop being so arrogant.
Arrogant people. And then following on that, there's a study. This is the Fox study, folks. This is the Tret. I always forget what it's. I always want to call it the Foxtrot study, but I think it's Tret. I can't remember.
The Tret Fox study.
Tret Fox study. So this has been an amazing thing where they took wild foxes in Russia and they penned them all up and they started doing selective breeding. The ones that were like really like bristly when humans were present, they bred them with other bristly ones. They kept them separated. And then the ones that were like, oh, human, I don't care. They bred with other ones that seemed at least a little less bristly at the beginning to humans. And over time, over generations of foxes, they've gotten like pretty domesticated foxes that you could play with, and ones that are probably even more rabidly anti-human than the ones they started with, because they crossbred a lot of aggressive ones with other aggressive ones. Now they have like, security for the farm.
Yeah, the friendly ones even get kind of floppier ears and more interesting color combinations, splotchy color. Yeah,
fluffier ears. They start to get they stay more puppy like.
Yeah,
longer, which is like a domestication process, right? Which they're intentionally doing. So this one isn't as arrogant, but it likely does, in the real world, the domestication of the dog probably was just living near each other. And the ones that were less afraid of humans were the ones that would hang around our garbage piles, right? And over time, over generations of the ones that weren't afraid of humans, hanging out with other foxes or wolves or whatever it was that weren't afraid of humans, they crossbred more often, and you got this more human-friendly population. And the same is probably also true of humans. Humans who were afraid of foxes and wolves probably stayed away. Okay, so what they did was, I guess they looked at the characteristic reduction in fearfulness in domesticated animals is closely linked to reductions in blood levels of ACTH, hormone released by the anterior pituitary gland, that, among other things, drives the stress response, according to University of Illinois animal science professor Anna Kukakova. Previous studies have found that ACTH levels in the anterior pituitary do not differ between tame and aggressive fox strains, Kukakova said. This means that differential expression of the gene encoding ACTH may not cause the differences seen in blood levels of this hormone. And some other mechanism is reducing ACTH bloodstream of tame foxes. Our analysis revealed that the differences between tame and aggressive foxes may lie in cells in the anterior pituitary gland, which can change their shapes to communicate with one another about when it's time to release stress hormones. Their pituitary gland may produce the same amount of stress hormone, but be less efficient at getting those hormones into the bloodstream. If confirmed, our finding could help explain why tame foxes are not stressed so easily as foxes that have not been selected for tameness. Couple of molecules.
All comes down to hormones.
Molecules.
As per you.
In the brain. Man, that's it. That's the difference between the domestication of an animal and something that wants to eat you or run away.
Face it, us mammals, we're all just slaves to the hormones.
Yeah, it's just the brain. The brain controls everything. You think you're in control, but nah, it's your brain.
Yeah, but it's a special hormone though. It's the levels of the stress hormone. So it's whether the foxes are stressed out or not.
And what's actually interesting,
people who act, who are unpredictable and aggressive, they've probably got a lot of stress hormone going on.
What's also interesting about this though is that the fluffier ears and the blotchy colorations are related to stress of the mother when the baby fox or dog or whatever it is, or maybe rabbit is in utero. So those lower stress levels, or that maybe it's this in the blood, less of this in the blood, translates into different hormone expressions, change, and is what they believe leads to that color differentiation that we were talking about in the domestic foxes, and the morphology of the ears and that sort of thing.
So this says a lot to us about maybe how I guess the environment of the mother and the experience of the mother while pregnant, and how that affects the offspring and the traits of the offspring.
And it could all be to training these cells at the back of the pituitary that's like, yeah, no, we're not going to release. They'll be fine. We're comfortable with this situation. I know you're ready to stress out, but just hang out here for a while. Just hang out. You don't need to.
Well, one place we are not going to want to hang out is along the coasts necessarily. Well, we know that the sea levels are rising, and there are wonderful maps that we can use to see how sea level rise is predicted to affect various areas, coastal regions around the globe. Well, you know what? Those models are wrong. They're wrong because, according to new data, researchers out of the University of Colorado Boulder and others have been part of a study looking at 25 years of satellite data looking at sea level rise, how it has been rising, and using that information to estimate how rise will occur in the future.
How high is the water, mama?
Well, right now, by 2100, it's expected to rise about 30 centimeters.
We can make it to the road in homemade boat. It's the only thing we got left that we got to.
Okay, but
oh no!
This new data says that the rate is increasing by 0.08 millimeters per year. This is an acceleration. This means the annual rate of sea level rise, a rate rise of 10 millimeters per year or even more. And then you add it to how the rise is going and how it's been going. And it extrapolates out to a potential sea level rise of 26 inches, 65 centimeters by 2100. Over double the current estimate.
Well, the hives are gone. I've lost my bees. The chickens are sleeping in the willow trees.
Willow cheese?
Houses are up past their knees. Oh, how high is the water, mama?
Yeah, how high is the water, mama? Well, a researcher named Steve Narum, he said that this acceleration is driven mainly by accelerated melting in Greenland and Antarctica, has the potential to double the total sea level rise by 2100 as compared to projections that assume a constant rate. So this is rate of increase, people. And this is almost certainly a conservative estimate. The extrapolation assumes that sea level continues to change in the future as it has over the last 25 years. Given the large changes we're seeing in the ice sheets today, that's not likely. So they're looking at this as a conservative estimate based on everything they've seen for the past 25 years from the satellite data and where we are right now. And they're kind of going, yeah, if business as usual, this acceleration will occur and this is where we're going to be, not taking into account the expansion of water due to heating, not taking into account other factors that could actually increase it even more. So that waterfront property you have right now, if you're in California, maybe you might want to move it to Placerville.
Yikes.
Well, now
significantly inland.
As we have reported, the water rise won't affect all coasts and shores
equally. It's true. It's true. Yes.
Interestingly, going to affect the West Coast much less so than it will parts of the East Coast and the South of the United States, and differently in other parts of the world. But it's still going to have an impact. I mean, one of the things is you're from the Central Valley, so you know this, Kiki. Aside from the fact that there's nothing but cows and chickens and roosters out here, according to Blair, it is also at one point in history was an inlet sea. Like, that's why it's such good growing grounds. This was all the bottom of an inland wetland sea at one point. And maybe it will be again.
Maybe it will
you're
be
still
again,
connected to the delta out there. You still have a bunch of wetlands.
As it was, it may be again. So this study also, they're looking at they've been looking at data from the GRACE satellite gravity mission to determine how the acceleration was being driven, and that's how they came to discover that it was being mainly driven by melting ice in Greenland and Antarctica. A co-author, Gary Mitchum from the University of South Florida College of Marine Science, says the tide gauge measurements are essential for determining the uncertainty in the global mean sea level acceleration estimate. They provide the only assessment of the satellite instruments from the ground. And the scientists have kind of struggled to pull out other important details from the tide gauge data. But the study actually, in a time when we're looking at budget cuts and potential satellite plans being cut and future plans for climate measurement potentially not going to happen now, this study highlights how important satellite records are for maintaining our view of the Earth and also validating climate model projections, because there was a projection. These satellite data are now saying our projection was too low and we were wrong. And this data is giving us a fuller, clearer picture of where we are. I mean, we could just get rid of the satellites and blind ourselves, to be like, yeah, ignorance is bliss, man. But
yeah. Well, but yeah, that'll hurt a lot of people. We need to, in order to take care of ourselves as a species, we need to know what's coming.
Absolutely. If we know what's coming, we can make plans for the global coastal communities. We can really estimate how we can help populations move and how we can moderate the effects so that fewer people are negatively affected around the world. Should I keep going with my stories? Justin, did you have another one for right here?
I used all my stories.
All stories. All right. Well, you know what? Let's talk about love. Back to love. I had to talk about the climate change satellite story. That was an important piece of news that had to be discussed. But now, love, sweet love. Guess what?
What?
Materialism's bad for marriage.
That makes sense.
What? No.
You're saying this on the most materialistic day of the year?
I know, on the day that is characterized by flowers and candy and gifts and, that you must buy things and give them to your partner as a sign of love. Sweet love. Yeah, no, Jason Carroll from BYU and his graduate students have published a study looking at dissatisfaction that's caused by materialism. Carroll says, we know that materialism can lead to poor money management, and that leads to debt and strain, but financial factors may not be the only issue at play in these situations. Materialism is not an isolated life priority. As the pursuit of money and possessions are prioritized, it appears that other dimensions of life, such as relationships, are de-emphasized. They looked at 1,300 married individuals and measured materialism, perception of marriage importance, and satisfaction with their marriages. And participants were in this given statements like, having nice things today is more important to me than saving for the future. Having money is very important to me. And then they had to rank how strongly they felt or agreed with the statements. They found that higher levels of materialism are linked to a decreased sense of importance of marriage and less satisfaction in marriage. And something that the researchers think is that maybe it's because materialism crowds out relationship priorities. When you think you can replace feelings and connection with stuff, you're constantly striving to get, or you're working hard to get the stuff, to fill the house, to do, to be the person.
You're spending all your time working.
So you're spending all your time working and not connecting.
What's the biggest problem in your relationship that you've come here to discuss? Well, I'm in a lease now, but I wish I was in a more expensive, finer automobile. I mean, she's got a nicer car than I do, and I just feel like I need to have also an equally expensive vehicle, and I need to wait another 8 months until my lease is up. And so this has been very frustrating for me. What are these people like? This is how I imagine these people. Like, and,
well, but also you wonder if it's a stress in the wrong thing. So that's kind of why I was making a joke about Valentine's Day is if someone does service and shows love every day of the year, but doesn't buy you a big present, do you then devalue the relationship?
Yes, immediately. No, okay. This is like I have made like I usually try to make a Valentine's Day gift, whether it's a painting or like write a song or something like that. Because if I go and buy something, I've always felt that's like I didn't have time to do anything from the heart. So yeah, pick out some smelly soap and some chocolate. There you go. Like this has always been my attitude.
Smelly soap and chocolates. Don't get those confused.
Well, like that's how I've always looked at it. So I might not be in that materialistic category, but I sort of think though too that it might be if both people are materialistic. It's sort of like if two people come together for any interest, it's going to be something that the relationship is a little bit revolved around. Like it turns out you and I are fans of the same sports ball team. Wow, I like this sports ball team too. So then what do? You go to a lot of sports ball games, you watch a lot of sports ball television of your team, and you dress the whole family in sports ball uniforms, and you're stuck with that forever. And you don't never get too far away from it because this is a binding fiber of the relationship. If you have come together over some ideology that you share, probably spend a lot of time.
Fancy cars? I love fancy cars. Let's drive fancy cars together.
And then what do? Your relationship revolves around buying the next fancy thing, and the more expensive it is, the more meaningful it is. And so I can see how no matter what it is that brought you as a couple together, if there is one thing that you have a common interest in, it's going to probably stay there. And if it's a materialistic thing, it means you're going to likely end up in a lot of debt and have to work really hard to pay it off.
Yeah.
So my advice is find somebody you have nothing in common with, that the relationship doesn't revolve around anything that you have in common, and then you've got a lot more freedom.
Relationship advice from Dr. Justin. Not a real doctor. The researcher goes on to say, many people are not fully aware of their materialism or the degree to which the pursuit of money is becoming an unbalanced priority in their life. It is helpful for spouses to evaluate and openly discuss the time patterns in their lives and make sure that they are devoting enough time to prioritize and strengthen their marriage relationship. So a lot of it comes down to communication, people. If somebody thinks they're doing something for the right reason, spending a lot of time at work trying to make the money or focusing on money, but that's not what the partner wants, and you're not talking about it, then you're going to be moving apart in your needs. But, it's that focus on money. You can get to the money, but it's only going to get you happiness at a certain point. It can buy you happiness. The money can buy you happiness. It can. According to a study out of Purdue University, researchers have determined, they published in Nature Human Behavior based on data from the Gallup World Poll, which is a representative survey of more than 1.7 million individuals from 164 countries. They looked at averages of estimates based on averages on purchasing power and questions related to life satisfaction and well-being. And they found that there is a threshold. They found that the ideal income is $95,000 for life evaluation satisfaction.
Not in California.
For an individual.
This was done somewhere.
Right, it varies from place, but this is for this is also for an individual, not for a family. And for simple emotional well-being, it's $60,000 to $75,000 for an individual. If you as an individual make $60,000 to $75,000 on average, that's your point for emotional well-being. But if you really want to be satisfied with your life, you as a single person need to make $95,000. They additionally found that people who go over the $95,000 mark, who kind of end up going past that, their happiness decreases.
Yeah.
So there is a maximum happiness conferred by money.
So what we need to do is take the extra money from everyone who makes more than $95,000 and give it to the people who make less than $95,000, and then
right.
everyone will be happy.
Everybody will be happy.
What this sounds like to me, though, is I wonder if it's actually the exact inverse relationship, that people who make less than $95,000 a year have so much financial trouble. There is more of a struggle, right, to just get by, and that breeds unhappiness. And
exactly.
that actually is what it is. It's not that money makes happiness. It's that not having a constant weight of debt, or where your next paycheck is coming from, or what bills to pay.
You don't have the stress.
That is a huge weight off of you.
Dr. Justin's not a real doctor. Thing that I always say about money and happiness. Money does not buy happiness. It pays misery to go away like nothing else does, though, right? When you're not having to like stress over or get the knock on the door, or get the late notice in the mail, or get the what do you call the overage fee, or whatever it is, when you don't have to, when you can just be like, oh, little Billy broke his leg at school today. Oh, that's terrible. Well, I'll just write a check to the doctor and it will be solved. You paid misery to go away.
That's right.
If instead you've got to worry that little Billy's never going to walk right because you can't afford a doctor bill and you don't have insurance, that's the difference. And
in this
$95,000 is
it's an average, but what the researchers say at the end here is there's definitely like you said, there's a point where they didn't say what you said, but it's money paying misery to go away. It's you've got your basic needs met. You can buy some conveniences. You're repaying your loans back. You're getting out of debt. There's this optimality point for money, but maybe past that point, the researchers say that maybe people begin to compare themselves more to other people, start seeking more things to be able to try and put their level of well-being closer to other individuals, or how they perceive it. And so that might lead to less life satisfaction as you get more money, kind of keeping up with the Joneses. Suddenly it's not just getting your needs met and being satisfied. It's all of a sudden trying to keep up with other people and have the status quo be different. And so money is a part, the researchers say, of what really makes us happy. And we're learning more about the limits of money.
I had this trust fund. Just fill in the worst thing you could say about somebody. A trust fund, fill in that blank, person who wanted to get into an economic conversation with me of some sort because of my Bernie Sanders stickers, which I still have on the back of my automobile. And they were pointing out, hey, almost everybody lives paycheck to paycheck. It's just as you make more money, the things you buy are more expensive. Right? That was their theory of I
have some words for that individual.
Everybody's paycheck to paycheck, right? Again, fill in the blank. The worst thing you can think about somebody, you can put that there and it'll work. Some people are paycheck to paycheck by choice, and some people aren't. And there's a gigantic difference between those two scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely. A huge difference. There's also a huge difference in the intelligence of various people. And a new study, this is my last story for the night? It's not. I still have more.
All of you from here on out, I think.
No, it's not. Blair's got bird udders.
My bird udders.
Chicks with.
That's right. Anyway, so research study looking at brains. Who knew? I brought a story about brains. Trying to use a new concept about brains to predict intelligence. And this is something that I think is really interesting. They're using fMRI to measure what is called neural entropy. And now Yeah. So we think of in physics or thermodynamics, the idea of entropy is a system going to chaos or
disseminating.
Mhm.
disseminating. There's a closed system eventually will become entropic, right? But in this particular case, the entropy measure is a measure of variety of possible system configurations. And so when we're talking about the networks of the brain, it's basically talking about all the different possible conformations and connections that the different networks could have. And the idea is that brains with a higher neural entropy measure
Are more intelligent?
would be more intelligent because they would the brain itself would potentially be predicting all the possible scenarios or be ready for more possible scenarios that would be occurring at any point in time. So they went about actually trying to measure this, and they used functional magnetic resonance imaging to look at the voxels, or these picture pixels in the brain of oxygen use within the brain. And the voxels are basically the measure of resolution that you can get with these fMRIs. And in the study, what they did determine is that as the voxels change, they can see changes and transitions between the voxels. So look at one particular voxel, and is it on? Is it off? How dynamic is the state of that particular voxel over time? And if the voxels have higher measures of change, of dynamic range, that suggests greater entropy. And so they actually showed a link between taking these pictures over time of people's brains and then doing intelligence tests on them, and basically correlated entropy, higher entropy, to being a predictor of intelligence.
Mhm.
So we might not have to take intelligence tests. Maybe it'll just be a brain scan and they'll go, yep, your brain's pretty dynamic. You must be a smarty pants.
Oh, that's great. Then test anxiety doesn't factor in.
Yeah. But I think it's
have
with
a feeling I would test very well on this, but I think that it may be an overrated form of intelligence. Like
Yeah,
the fact that you can sub-reference and tangent constantly doesn't necessarily mean you can stay focused on any task long enough to accomplish anything. It just means you're really good about thinking about all the other possibilities involved with the question you just asked, but maybe never get around to giving an answer.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm really interested now in this idea of brain entropy and what it means, for basically, how nimble is your brain? And what does that mean for personality, not just intelligence, but personalities, how you react to information? What does it influence?
Yeah.
And what does it mean about who you are? Yeah. So
and
neat
again,
new measure.
Or maybe not again. Maybe I've never said this before. Maybe this is the first time this has ever been said. Maybe it's not again at all. What if intelligence, the thing about intelligence, it's always sometimes when the word itself bothers me. When I try to implement it and think about how do you rate somebody's intelligence? Or because those things that we're good at with our minds vary, I think, from person to person. Different people have different ways of approaching information, different ways of approaching the world. And there's certain tasks where your intelligence is not the right fit for the task that you're being asked to do. And somebody else's intelligence might be well suited to it, even though they're not as good as verbal quips. Somebody might have an amazing photograph, and I have met people with photographic memories, and I mean uncanny, like the kind of stuff you could put on a TV show and would wow people. But maybe they're not good with talking with humans, right? Like maybe they have other things. So intelligence is a thing that I think everybody has, and just need to find the if you are doing something and you feel like, gosh, I'm not really smart at this, you're probably doing the wrong thing, because there's probably something you could be doing where people go like, wow, you're a genius at that. I think everybody's probably a genius at doing something. It's where you have chosen to apply the brain that you have. That is how you're getting rated on your intelligence. For instance, at my
so there's specific intelligence and there's general intelligence, and this is kind of trying to measure more general intelligence.
But I
Mental
guarantee you,
quickness.
there are people less intelligent, without putting myself on any sort of a platform. There are people much less intelligent than me who understand chemistry. And for the life of me, no matter how I've slogged, trudged, trotted, troglodyted through the information, I don't get it. I cannot keep in my head an atom. I cannot look at a diorama of a molecule written in its elemental compositional forms and understand what I'm looking at. I cannot read the shorthand of the periodic table, though I have stared at it longer than most people have stared at their walls. I like for whatever reason, my brain's like, nah. Okay.
No, don't want to look at that one, but you'll understand it in a different way. Not necessarily the periodic table as it is, but other aspects of things.
Or maybe not.
But so everybody, yes, so everybody has their specialties. And my final story, I just want to say that some people, it's great that they've gotten their specialty in science, because when people like Elon Musk and SpaceX launch a Tesla Roadster into a Mars crossing orbit, and the cameras run out of batteries, everything's out of batteries, it's not giving off a signal anymore. Where's it gonna go? Where is it gonna be? What kind of an orbit is it gonna be getting into? And SpaceX had estimated what the orbit might be, but what is its actual orbit? Well, of course, scientists are gonna figure that out. So they did. They want to, we want to know what the chances of this Tesla Roadster coming back in and smashing into Earth or into Venus. What's the probability, right? Mm-hmm. So they ran these researchers from Canada, Hanno Rhine, Daniel Tamayo, David Vokrulicki. I didn't say that one right. They ran a whole bunch of simulations, and they have discovered the first close encounter that we can expect with the Tesla, again, where it will come in close proximity to Earth, 2091. We have to wait until 2091 for it to come back near Earth. And the orbit that it is in will have a probability of collision with the Earth and Venus over the next 1 million years to be 6% and 2.5% respectively. And the dynamical lifetime of the Tesla in space, just a few tens of millions of years.
Chump change.
Yeah. So it's in a stable orbit. It is out there. It's gonna be coming into close encounters with Venus and with Mars, but not actually running into any of these wonderful inner planets. Thank you. Good. Yes. The spaceman is safe. And thank you, scientists, for doing things like this.
I'm sure it took them 5 minutes.
Yes.
How much does a Roadster weigh? Okay, let me just there you go. They do that all day.
My favorite thing is, so this paper was published in the archive, which is a preprint server for the physical sciences. And this is for something that basically occurred a week ago. It's been a week and a half since the Tesla launch, and they've already done the analysis and written the paper, published it to the preprint server.
That's what I'm saying. It took them a couple minutes to do this math.
Just a couple of minutes. Like this is a quick turnaround. And bleak. Yes, I said 2091. We'll have to throw a Tesla Roadster party in 2091.
Yep.
Blair will still be here.
Oh, you'll be here too. It'll be fun.
It's a
What are you
little
gonna
bit.
keep
Wait,
an urn in the background. I'll be in the back. I'll be one of those things on Kiki's shelf.
you're gonna be a desiccated husk.
Oh,
You
no.
were
No, just a
trapped by
brain in
some
a jar.
firefly.
Kirsten will finally have that real human skeleton to hang in the background.
Right. Who's that? Oh, that's Justin. Don't worry. I just kick him in the
Oh,
shins sometimes.
Make that a thing. Can we put that in writing? That would be awesome.
I'm donating my body to science, by which I mean
donating my body
Dr.
to Kiki specifically
Yeah.
to turn me into a skeleton.
Oh my gosh. Great.
I actually spent about an hour today mounting a skeleton, a human skeleton. So that's a funny coinky dink.
That is a funny coinky
I have
dink.
really bad jokes, so I'm not going to say.
All right,
Oh,
bring us
boy.
your last story, please.
Well, the bird udders I was talking about. We know birds don't lactate. I'm just being silly, but
You're an utter
lactation.
sham.
Lactation is part of my story today about zebra finches. Let me explain. Lactation is put into action by a hormone prolactin in mammals.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been studied in other animals besides mammals. They actually found that prolactin cues birds and fish to produce food for their offspring, things like crop milk, crop milk, and milky secretions that they feed their offspring.
There's something about
delicious.
the phrase milky secretions.
Oh, yes.
Blech.
Yep. Dip your Valentine's cookies into that milky secretion or that crop milk.
Hang on a second. How did birds come up with milky secretions?
So crop milk is
I don't
basically
know about this at all.
when
I've
you
never
see
heard of it.
birds regurgitate food
Yeah.
and it's liquidy. This is something that penguins do, right?
Mhm.
That's called crop milk. It
Okay.
looks milky. It's not milk. Some fish secrete substances that look milky. They're more mucousy, really, that feed their babies. So prolactin is part of the chemical process that causes that to happen as well. But this is the first study now out of Cornell University to show how prolactin works in birds that do not make food for their babies from an internal source. So zebra finches do not make crop milk, but they do have parental care, which is why they were chosen for this experiment. So males and females take turns taking care of their babies. It's actually a pretty well coordinated effort. And so in this study, they took 25 male-female pairs. They suppressed prolactin in peanut. They used a drug that suppresses it in peanut oil, and then they used normal peanut oil with no drugs in it as a control. And they found that after the birds had been fed drugs for several days to reduce their production of prolactin, they were measuring the temperature of the nests, which was a proxy for how frequently the parents were paying attention to the babies, how often they were in the nest, and they monitored how much time this parent spent regurgitating food. And they found that lowering prolactin eliminated completely, in a lot of cases, or at least drastically reduced brooding and feeding in both male and female zebra finches. They were also much less synchronized when they fed compared to the group. They said during those 2 hours when the hormone was suppressed, they were providing basically no care. So, yeah, so this hormone, prolactin, it needs to be renamed because it doesn't have anything to do with lactation. It's starting to look like this is something that evolutionarily starts way further back on that tree of life that helps dictate parental care.
Yeah. That would be a really interesting thing to look at prolactin homologs also in various species that have some aspects of parental care and kind of see if,
like alligators,
right, what levels of prolactin are in these species, when are the levels high during their mating, breeding, reproductive cycle? Are there, like I was saying, homologs that are present in insects?
Yes.
Like spiders that carry their young on their back, the
Absolutely.
what species
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
And
that'd be
there
cool
was
to check
there was
out.
actually, this is reminding me, there was another study that I encourage everyone to look up this week about frogs, where the males take care of the eggs and actually protect them from predators, including other members of the same species. You wonder if these little frogs have
Prolactin.
something similar happening that is causing them to take care of their eggs.
Yeah. Pro-parenting. We'll call it pro-parenting. Instead of
Parent good doll. No, gonna need to continue to workshop that one.
Pro-parenting. I think pro-parenting.
Pro-parenting is good.
pro-parenting instead of prolactin. There we go.
Pro-lovetin.
Prolactin. That's right. It will work alongside oxytocin for bonding, love, connectedness among all people. I feel so connected to everyone tonight. Thank you for joining us all on the show. Thank you for watching. We have made it to the end of another episode. All of our science. Whew, we have discussed it all. Thank you for sticking with us if you did till
And
the
you know
end.
what's kicking in now? The pro-Patreon.
The pro-Patreon. That's right. That's where we're going. Pro. It's time for me to say thank you to all of our Patreon sponsors.
Creole accent come from all of this?
I don't know where that came from. Keith Corsell, Tyrone Fong, E.O. Byron Lee, Kevin Parachan, Mark Hessenflow, Matt Sutter, Ken Hayes, Aaron Luthen, Flying Out, Christopher Rappin, Brendan Minish, Greg Briggs, Robert, Gary S., Marjorie, Rudy Garcia, Robert Aston, Kurt Larson, Steve Lesseman, Ben Rothig, Sean Lamb, Greg Riley, Jim Drapeau, Lisa Slazewski, Christopher Dreyer, Brian Carrington, Jason Olds, John McKee, Paul, Sean Bryant, Rick Ramus, Brian Condren, Richard, Eric Knapp, Kyle Washington, Time Jumper 319, Bob Calder, Bill Kersey, Jason Roberts, Matthew Litwin, Mark Mazzaros, John Ratnaswamy, Craig Landon, Jacqueline Boyster, Ed Dyer, Tony Steele, Alex Wisson, Stave Bell, Andy Groh, Joshua Fury, Charlene Henry, Richard Onomus, G. Burton Lattimore, and Paul Disney. Thank you for your support on Patreon. And if any of you out there are interested in learning more about Patreon, you can find information at patreon.com/thisweekinscience. And you can also help us out if you are so inclined by telling your friends about TWIS. That's right. Let them know there's a cool science show they might want to listen to.
If you haven't told them about us by now, it must be somebody you really don't like.
That's right. And on next week's show, we will be back once again broadcasting live online Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific time on twist.org/live, where you can watch live, join our chat room. Hey, chat room. Thanks for being there. And if you can't make it, don't worry. That's okay, because past episodes are archived at our YouTube channel, and we're broadcasting there right now. Hey, YouTube channel, how's it going, people over on YouTube? You can find those past episodes at twist.org/YouTube. You can also find episodes at facebook.com/thisweekinscience. And no, I didn't forget about those of you who are watching on Facebook. Thanks for watching us there.
Thank you for enjoying the show. TWIS is also, of course, available as a podcast. Just Google This Week in Science in your iTunes directory, or if you have a mobile type device, you can look up TWIS 4 Droid app in the Android marketplace, or simply This Week in Science in anything Apple marketplacey.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes will be available on our website. That's at www.twist.org, where you can also make comments and start conversations with the hosts or other listeners.
Or you can contact us directly. Email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at TWISMinion@gmail.com, or Blair at twist.org. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, somewhere in your subject line. Otherwise, your email will be spam filtered into oblivion. You can also hit us up on the Twitter, where we are at TWIS Science, at Dr. Kiki, at Jacksonfly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes to you in the night, please let us know.
We'll be back here next week, and we hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you learned anything from the show, remember,
It's all in your head.
This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. This week in science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. This week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got one disclaimer and it shouldn't be news. That what I say may not represent your views, but I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just better understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy. Jeopardy. And This Week in Science is coming your way. So everybody listen to everything we say. And if you use our method instead of rolling a die, we may rid the world of toxoplasma gondii. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got a laundry list of items I want to address. From stopping global hunger to dredging Loch Ness. I'm trying to promote more rational thought. And I'll try to answer any question you've got. But how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop 1 hour a week? This Week in Science is coming your way. You better just listen to what we say. And if you learned anything from the words that we said, then please just remember it's all in your head. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in 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 Science.
All right, we've come to the end of the show. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another episode. Another episode. Bah!
What?
Bah!
What? What
I
are
hit
you?
the wrong button.
What are you scowling at?
All good. I have Darwin, Charles Darwin.
Yes.
That is notes. English naturalist Charles Darwin
He just loved to study barnacle anatomy.
developed the concept now called Darwinism to explain evolution. Through natural selection, when an organism develops advantageous genetic traits, it survives to pass these on to offspring. Organisms that cannot adapt do not survive, and their traits die with them. These views sparked a controversy in Darwin's time that rages to this day among humans, although other animals do not seem to be much bothered by his ideas.
Is that written on him somewhere?
Yeah, get to the
Oh, that's cool.
Note.
That's fun.
Yes. February 12th, 1809 was his birthday.
Oh, happy
It would
birthday,
be
Darwin.
211.
Wow, he's a lot older than I thought he was.
Yeah.
All right. For the
No,
sake
seven,
of
sorry.
for the sake of
207.
Blair's sanity tomorrow
92.
afternoon, I think we should.
Oh, that's right. We had a nice long show, but Blair has to get up really early in the
Yeah.
morning.
He's actually
Sure
probably
do.
better off not sleeping at this point.
Yeah, at this point, I guess you should just
Take a
stay
cup
up.
of coffee.
Mm-hmm. No,
All
I
right.
think 5 hours is better than no hours.
Say goodnight, Blair.
Good night, Blair. Say good night, Justin.
Good night, Justin.
Good night,
Kiki.
Oh, good night, everyone. This is a quick after show,
Sorry.
but we gotta go. We love you so.
Yeah.
I was gonna do some other rhyming, but can't
We
really.
hate to go, but that's
We-
the show.
Oh, yeah, I kind of said that, and then don't bo ho ho. It doesn't work anyway.
No.
No. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode. We'll be back next week. I forgot to say we have an interview next week. We're going to be talking with Ryan Kobrick about his experience at the Mars simulation site.
Oh, that's fun.
Where he was for 2 weeks and testing spacesuit designs and other fun things. Looking very, very exciting for that. So stay tuned.
Isn't that where they did the like poop potato thing?
What?
Might be no.
We reported
This
on the show, right? At the Mars simulation, they tried to
Yes.
figure out if they could. Yep. Okay.
But I think it's a different place. There are multiple different Mars
It's a different Mars
simulation
simulation. Okay.
places. Yes.
Just checking.
Think the
Banking
poop-
my questions. I will not ask him about poop potatoes.
I like the
I'll think
poop-
about more things.
Poop potatoes are in Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
And this is like in Utah or no,
Okay.
something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, everyone out there, thank you for joining us. Again, if you need more information, twist.org. You can find us on the social media also. And we'll be back in a week on Wednesday. We hope you have a
sure.
great time until then. Happy science to you all. Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you for sharing it with us. We send you this science Valentine.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do it. I'm bad at it.